be there too, because they will surely have a lot to say. But we will try to stop at 5 p.m. If you agree. Who does not agree? Okay, too much. So that's it. Stop. Now, 5 p.m. we stop. May I introduce our ladies, and as usual, Melody will introduce the gentleman. Now, Elisabeth Sötz, to my right, is from the WWF, Worldwide Fund, Austria. I wrote Österreich, but actually it's Austria. She is Alpine Policy Coordinator for all the Alpine countries for WWF, and she's biologist and environmental management. I hope it's okay? Good. Then we have Franziska Drasdo here. She's from the city of Munich. She's project manager for this EU project, which is called Dama, which is a green infrastructure project in suburban areas, which has maybe nothing to do with Alpine, but very much to do with the subject. Is that right? You are a landscape planner.
Exactly. And we had landscape Reiterer, who we had already a very inspiring speech yesterday. You're the executive secretary from the Alpine Convention. Aleš, Bizjak, I'm sorry for my pronunciation, from the Slovenian Water Agency. And I take so you've had a very broad experience, both geographically and over 20 countries, but always involved in the integrated water resources management processes, from local, national, bilateral levels, and you're very active also in EU and United Nations. I understand also in the Danube and Sava River Commissions, in OECD, and you've been director in many, several commissions. So, and here you're also present as an observer that because you've been following the SPARE projects over the 3 years. We also have Jan Zenzimir. Again, sorry for my pronunciation. So you're in systems ecologist, exactly. You've also been following the SPARE projects, and you're working at Verbund, among other things as well. And I'm also very happy to introduce Otto Pirker. You're a representative from actually the private sector. You're working at the Verbund AG, which is a hydropower company, expert in hydrology, hydropower generation, and development of renewable energies. And you also been the chairman of the working group Hydro of the Euro Electric, exactly. So which is the European Association of the Electricity Industry. And you are also a lecturer at the GOPU for hydropower frameworks. So we're very happy to have all of you here. And
I will continue with a very, very short summary of the workshops this afternoon of AlpES, so that we can introduce the matter. It started in a strange manner. It was the idea was to close the mountains, to put up barriers, to reduce the number of visitors, etc. And fortunately, this will probably not happen because the people will be informed about the risks and damage of leisure activities and how to reduce their impact. And the information and more basically awareness and communication were the two key words for AlpES workshops. There was the idea that ecosystem services concepts are difficult to understand for normal people. We're probably more than normal, but normal people don't really understand it. So we have to communicate in an easier, in a more simple way. Not all ecosystem services can translate into economy, and this is a problem. So what can be translated in economy, you can change into payment for ecosystem services, but not everything is possible. And one conclusion was also that good management of tourism destinations, just plain good management, is the first step for taking into account ecosystem services. For payments of ecosystem services, the most important thing is transparency and communication, that the people can understand what they are paying for. And something which has not been said this afternoon, which I learned just after that, is that payment for ecosystem services is always voluntary and not compulsory. This I didn't know. Do you agree? Okay, so we have an agreement. Now, can you please summarize the SPARE projects?
Well, actually, we're very lucky to have Aleš Bizjak, who participated in two of the workshops from Otto and also from Slovenia. So, if you want to summarize about the main points that were discussed.
Thank you, Valerie. I believe I have about 5 minutes if you want to stop at 5 o'clock.
Yes, so you can reduce it to 4.5 minutes.
Thank you. I will try to do it. So indeed, I had the chance and the opportunity to be with the two workshops this afternoon, originating from the SPARE project. And also I have now the duty to very shortly, not ignorant, according to the time available, represent to you what are the main messages from the both workshops. The first workshop was entitled The Management and Protection of Alpine River Ecosystem. And 17 participants of all levels of administration and research participated to the workshop. This is important for you because the information you will get is more reliable, is more colorful if you have this data. Now, the SPARE project, in terms of the Alpine River ecosystem protection and management, analyzed or defines many or plenty of issues which are important in the processes of protection of the river ecosystems or the management of the river. But 3 of them were really striking out, 3 of them were really important, and these 3 were the subject of today's workshop. The first one was the formal role of the process and political support. The second one was the cooperation and agreement among the stakeholders. And the third one was the transboundary cross-sectoral communication and cooperation. To be very short in details with these 3 issues, for the formal role of the process and political support, it was the consensus omnium of the workshop that political support is very important for the processes of protection of the river ecosystems and river management in general. That the network, the political, semi-political network is needed when you want to achieve full-scale results. Indeed, you do not need, it's not conditio sine qua non that you have the political support, but without it, you will not achieve the results of the same scale if you have the political support. Now, the next one is that political support should be cross-sectoral. It should not be alone in the game of the protection of the river ecosystem. Now, from top down, the political support is needed, and from bottom up, you still need strong professional and expert-based support, so to gain really a synergetic effect at the end of the day. So it's not the politicians who are the players only. According to the political support, the mass level, the mass effect was mentioned. That means it is not only the politicians individually or the individual or the political groups who are important, but the mass political movement, which is supported usually by NGOs or by the people on the street, not demonstrating for this, but really to gain the broadest as possible the support with at least a bit of the political context. I have to go on. So regarding the cooperation and agreement among stakeholders, several good practices are confirming the importance of this issue, like the local water communities in the drone pilot projects, which is a permanent stakeholder platform since 1993. And if I may mention the Sötz River Foundation, and then if I mention also the Drava River Vision Declaration, which is 10 years old, message from the river management, but please mind this one also. And what else was exposed is that it is important to support development of common understanding among stakeholders, obviously. Regarding the transboundary cross-sector communication and cooperation, it was emphasized that it must be done in transboundary context. It should be cross-sectorally communicated. It is based on confidence, transparency, informality, and common vision.
Thank you very much.
One more sentence for the second workshop.
Yes, please.
So in the second workshop, the integrated river basin management approach, which is promoted by the SPARE project, was in depth explained in the phases, right, which are integrity, participation, decision support, financial integrity, and monitoring. And 11 participants were asked to give opinion about each of the phases, and at the end, only the phase participation. This one really got a lot of interest, and what was especially emphasized is that usually, when you are dealing with the participatory approach, you are usually dealing with asymmetrics of stakeholder structure, and you should, when you are trying to bias this unbiased group of stakeholders, you should be aware of cultural differences. You should be aware that you need to build the trust. You should need to find the entry point, let's say the story, the common story, and you should understand the different backgrounds and interests of the stakeholders. And by this, I would end and leave at least a little bit of time space for the colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And Otto Pirker participated in the Innsbruck workshop, which was more about the participatory approaches. I understand there were maybe no clear conclusions out of it, but maybe some insights.
Well, yes, it was. I think there were very interesting discussions. We had through a group work. We had 3 groups. And it was, so far it was interesting because everybody in this group, he took another position in his job. For example, I took the position not of a hydropower expert, I took the position of a farmer. And there were several questions. So to discuss when should the participation, stakeholder participation, public participation start on different levels. And for me it was very interesting that more or less a common conclusion was there must be a certain level of information. So also one of the group of our group was from the administration. So they said, okay, the administration should start and prepare, and after that we can, the stakeholders will step into this process. And it also was interesting that in one group there was another opinion. So that the argumentation was which group I do not want. So in the public participation on the very first step, and in other groups, who should participate, for whom is it of interest. But nevertheless, I think finally, yes, stakeholder participation is of importance, but you need certain information for it.
Thank you very much. So information you can build on for a good participation process. And what I heard is participation here. I heard something which you said was mass political movement. And you said, for example, NGOs. Now, the NGO here is to my right. What does the NGO think of this? And what are the messages you would like to bring us?
Well, we means WWF. We have been observer to both of these projects, to SPARE and to AlpES, for the main reason that we are interested in the conclusions. So a project always stays a bit on the theoretic level, and we want to know, or wanted to know, what can we do with it in practice. So after, not only today, but the last years, I think most interesting point, not the most important, but for me or us most interesting point in the AlpES, for instance, was how and when to use the ecosystem service approach. I think in all of these workshops today and in the past, it came out that ecosystem service approach cannot be used for everything and anywhere. For instance, we had a transnational workshop last week where we found that even when showing the ecosystem services in a specific point, you will not get a big investor to restrain from his project to build a ski resort in this workshop. The investor will still think that his money and the work he is creating, the employment he is creating is more worth than the ecosystem services. But this investor also needs the permits who are granted or not by the public administration, and it's the public administration that has to care if there is clean air and drinking water supply and no enhanced risk for disasters and so on. So one conclusion for me is also to use the ecosystem service language, if you want so, towards the public administration, and maybe just train or sensibilize the local and provincial administration for these approaches. Also, if you are talking about some option discussion in infrastructure, for instance, you always have to do a cost-benefit analysis, and if you cannot express the cost and the benefit of the, let's say, greener solution than the grayer solution, then you're lost. So this is really the big gain in ecosystem services. Somebody already said yesterday, if you want that economists hear what you're saying about the value of ecology, then you have to use terms that they understand. So this is the benefit in putting ecosystems in money terms. But, of course, we always have to stay aware of the risk of the offsetting trap. So you always have to keep in mind that putting some monetary value to ecosystems doesn't mean that you can destroy them as long as you pay for it. So that's for AlpES. Can I still say something for SPARE?
You can.
So, I think that in all the pilot regions, it was shown, and also in the workshop, it was shown that integrated river basin management is not an easy thing, but it's worth the effort. So the results might be better if you have done all this effort. Although we were just saying that all the pilot regions did include all the stakeholders, but they always stayed in one country, because although most of them crossed the river at one point, they were not talking about that, because then things will get even more complex, and then it really get complicated. Anyway, I hope that one day we will come also in practice to the point where we can really talk about transporter integrated rural basin management. As an NGO, I also I'm allowed to have some visions. And just one last remark. Most of the examples, at least in the EU countries, about integrated rural basin management are based on the Water Framework Directive. And as probably many, but not all of you do know, that the Water Framework Directive is evaluated right now. There's the so-called fitness check with expert rounds, national delegations, and also some public consultation processes. But I say, so do you think the Water Framework Directive is worth to stay in place, or don't we want it anymore? At the moment, it really looks like that they say, no, it's not fit for purpose. It means we don't have any Water Framework Directive anymore. We don't have any of these fundamental principles. So you can deteriorate any river if you like. And we think that's really a risk. And if that happens, then we don't have to talk about any river management anymore, because then we have really problems.
Thank you very much. I didn't know personally about this fitness check with, when I hear, looks rather negative. As a Swiss, we are not members of the EU, of course you know that. But one thing we think, oh, that's good, is the Water Framework Directive. This is really something which is appreciated, and where we got the feeling that, oh, the Europeans are also doing something for the environment. That's so I'm rather unhappy about this. Now, does anyone have a point of view or additional knowledge about this? Yes, please.
Thank you about the Water Framework Directive. I don't have the feeling as you have. Yes, I know about the fitness check. There will be a revision of the Water Framework Directive starting in 2019. And so far I know, the discussion already started, is at the starting point. So far I know, there will not be a very huge, there will not be huge changes on that. But there will be one or two additional periods. The end will not be 2027, there will be two further periods, that's what I know. And now from the hydropower sector, for us of course the Water Framework Directive, it is a big challenge, and we try to do our best. It costs a lot of money, of course, but it also shows how to deal with it, because we in Austria, especially from Verbund, for us communication with the administration is a very important topic to get a common understanding. So especially in re-establishing river continuity, we did a lot and we will do a lot in the future. But for us, for example, the hydropeaking still is a topic of research, because we think we don't have enough understanding on that, and it is so important for us because we also have the European energy policy. Renewables, we have to integrate the renewables like wind and PV, and we have to find the balance of that.
Thank you very much. So I think we have the perspective from the NGO, from the hydropower sector. I don't know, Aleš, if you want to give your perspective from a national authority on the legal frameworks, what you think about when you hear the perspective from the WWF and the hydropower sector. on the Water Framework Directive.
I didn't hear. Did you express?
Yeah, so maybe to explain, because you say, yeah, for many public authorities and also for the hydropower sector, we understand that there are some obstacles in the implementation of the directive. Some say, yeah, but you have this non-deterioration principle and we need some more exceptions. Or we need longer time, so the deadline by 2027, we cannot reach it. You have to expand the deadline. The catch in this thing is that if the vote is, okay, it is not fit for purpose, as they say at the EU, so that no, as it is, the Water Framework Directive, we don't want it anymore, and it's not that we will make one little change here and one little change there, maybe expand the deadline, and it says, okay, then revision means, okay, then we are doing something completely new and we start from zero.
Okay.
And that's the problem.
So let's wait and see. And did you want to give your perspective? No? Maybe someone from Boku would like to say something about this topic?
Maybe a very short remark, just a remark. The reason why we need an additional period, it is not the hydropower sector. We are forced to do it because if a hydropower company doesn't set the measures, they will lose the concession or whatever. In Austria, for example, the allowance of the hydropower. Where we need additional periods is the public sectors. The communities, they don't have the money to invest. This is the big problem in Austria, for example.
You wanted to say something?
Yes, well, we started this intermezzo discussion with mass political movements and NGOs, and so let me comment this. I believe strongly that we need not only the WWF, but all the NGOs of this world to do their job, because they are doing tremendous job, and someone has to do this job. Otherwise, we would just discuss among sectors what to do and what not to do. And I know that NGOs are criticizing all involved sides, not only the development side of the story. Now, this is regarding the NGOs. And regarding the Water Framework Directive, I know that 2019 is the 19th year from the adoption. And that this will be the year which will show the way forward for the Water Framework Directive. I believe strongly it will remain on the scene. I believe strongly also that WWF and all other political mass movements will support this progressive idea to remain, to leave the Water Framework Directive do its own job. Regarding the 6 years periods, I believe strongly also that this was one of the maybe, not to say mistakes, but maybe not tuned enough decisions, because in 6 years the biological side of the water will not respond to your measures enough, according to the investment in terms of time and money you have to do. And on the other side, the 6 years period, it might be also tight timeline for the development side, let's say for the agriculture or for the hydropower. So this story is very colorful. And this is, I believe, we have to understand what will happen in 2019 from various aspects. Thank you.
If you want to speak. We'll close this subject about the Water Framework Directive and we'll come back to the implementation of what has been developed in these projects. We've talked about awareness, we talked about participation. Now I would very much like to know from someone who is in a town, to know how do you see the implementation in the town of Munich of the ideas which have been developed? You can say, I don't know, but if you have an idea, you can...
No, I don't want to say something. I think from the perspective of the administration from the municipality of Munich, I personally really like the approach of the ecosystem services because I think they have a great potential of reflecting different perspectives and different functions of ecosystems. But on the other hand, they also have huge potential for problems on the administrative level. And for example, if I would think of getting any farmer in or around the city of Munich, get to know how much his or her land might be valuable, there would be, in a minute, there would be there would just be some discussions about the prices of the land. So the term value and the monetary or economic value of ecosystem services has the potential that people would discuss on how much land is valuable and for how much money I can sell my land for to the city of Munich. So that's the other perspective that I would think is quite difficult to think of to implement ecosystem services on the administrative level. And then again, there's also the city council. So even if you're working on in the administrative level, you would still have to pass the city council if they don't agree because they have some other economic issues they want to focus on. Well, then you don't have a chance to pass that.
I see. Thank you very much. Before I pass the word to Mr. Reiterer, I would like you to comment. We don't know yet the results. We had a vote, no, and we had different. Oh, I can't stay here. We have different statements which we had. The three foremost statements were about public awareness. We spoke the whole afternoon about public awareness. There is a second one about closer collaboration, and the third one about participation. And then I had a fourth one, which means other, just all others features. Now, we'll lift that. I don't know what is in there. But I know there are small orange balls, but I don't know how many. Okay. And this we can't lift, it's sealed. Now don't mix them up, because we have to know which is what, which is which. And this I have to unseal. So, now, most, a very nice sign. We got, obviously, this one with the other is the one with the least mentions, which means that the three labels which we have here are indeed among the most important. Now, the most important seems to be the public awareness of functions and services of alpine ecosystems is fundamental for sustainable protection and development. Now, Mr. Reiterer, what do you think of this? Difficult question.
It's a good question. I don't know if I have the answer. That's the problem with these good questions. I myself put some orange balls in, with one in each except in other, because I found other to be rather unspecific, but that is a statement of the obvious. I think when we're talking about, what was it, public awareness, participation, and what was the third one?
The third one
I'm
is
glad I'm not the only one.
collaboration.
As I said, I put a ball in each of these, whatever cylinders, for the reason that I believe all of the three are important. This is where I think in our work the myth of Sisyphus starts again, because that's something we will have to do ever and ever again, and once I believe we were up the mountain, the ball rolls back and we will have to push it up again. I think that's the reality of the work that we are doing. The question, and I think I also said this a little bit yesterday, is how do we do this? How do we create public awareness? How do we communicate to the people? If you look at the term ecosystem services and go out to the people on the street and ask them what do you think about ecosystem services, I think what you will get is a huge question mark in their faces. Aleš and I had a little chat in the break before, talking about this kind of different costumes for more or less the same things that appear every kind of decade or a second decade. So we talked about multifunctionality in the past, we're talking about ecosystem services now, we're talking about green infrastructure. What is a green infrastructure? For me, as someone representing the Alpine Convention, green infrastructure first and foremost would be things like protective forests that protect our habitats from the dangers of the mountains. It would be the rivers that flow by, it would be the air that I breathe. If I talk about the city of Munich, you will have a very different approach to what green infrastructures are. And rightly so, because your view is informed by your background and your needs, basically. So yes, I think all the three are extremely important. One more idea to the term of ecosystem services. For years and years and years, there is an attempt to convince business by using business-like language. This is worth and it works to a very long, very big extent. But there are limits to this, as not everything that is valuable in the end has a price. And that's something I think where we should also be rather careful in the way how we phrase some of our ideas and approaches. We need to be aware of the limitations that these approaches have. Collaboration, one point, I think I made this point also yesterday, how important I believe it is, and I think the examples that we see with the river basins here, it's also a striking one. But looking at the Sötz river, it doesn't end on the Slovenian-Italian border, it continues flowing. If you look at the Inn, it doesn't end in the Engadin, it continues on to other countries as well, and so that's also a very big call for international cooperation and collaboration as well. Looking on my watch, I think I should stop here.
You don't even have to look at your watch, I did it for you. And I would thank you very much for this. I would say these could be closing words of this panel discussion, if you do agree, except if you would like to add the side of the book.
When we talk about public awareness, one thing that we have to address is trust. And one of the problems we have, and we've noticed several times in workshops, is whether people participate and whether they trust. In one of the discussions we had, we mentioned that there are ways to build trust through citizen science. There are countries which have used retired people and very young people to measure the height of groundwater and taken water quality measurements, so you're not learning science in school, you're learning science because you're doing it. You're doing it with scientists and you're participating in the analysis. This is particularly important when we have questions about the validity of the European Union itself, in that the participation in elections is historically low. And we constantly see in the polls where the people are really questioning what actually is going on in Brussels and how much it means for them, and why is there this apathy in voting. And so when we have participatory processes that engage people in a way where they understand their own problems better because they're measuring, not only are they developing awareness, but they're developing trust in the process. And so there are ways in which I think the different type of tools we've mentioned here and you've been working on in these projects could be building something that is quite beneficial on a number of levels, because there are a number of public processes. And so I'll tie this in. You asked this question about mass involvement, and that comment has been made that some of the most important legislation for the environment did not happen without people demonstrating on the street, because they showed the politicians that they could not retreat on something. So it's not just lobbying, it's not just NGOs, it's also people showing and expressing their will on the street. And that is something which, from my perspective as somebody raised in the 50s and 60s, has declined, and probably people will see that maybe we need some more of that. So, yes, just a few closing comments.
Thank you very much. You can keep it because I'm online all the time. We heard awareness, we heard trust. There's another word which came right at the beginning yesterday, was responsibility. So, if I can add this word responsibility, because I think it's all our responsibility to help for the implementation of what has been done. Before we close, and it will be to Kerstin and Aleš to close, I would like to ask, please, Robin, you have 2 practical details? Do you have?
Yes.
Because then Aleš and Kerstin will have the real closing.
Yeah, and just a practical detail. At the end, it would be really nice if the partners could just take their files with them, and also the headset. We need them back. So please don't forget to give them.
And then maybe also the
and of course the badges as well.
and the final publications.
Thank you very much.
Please, Aleš Labadini and Kerstin Böck, may I ask you to close the event, and at the same time thank you very, very much for what you did in spite of Suzanne's absence, and what you did for this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olivier. So first of all, let's just say that we are very happy with how this 1.5 day review went. First of all, we experienced an informative, social, and colorful marketplace last night. Then we listened to thought-provoking keynotes this morning, where a lot of keywords emerged that accompanied us throughout the day, and we will probably come back to them later. And lively discussion in the 6 workshops. So, like I said, it seems that several central themes emerged during this final conference. I think I have to thank again Olivier and Valérie for taking note and repeating these central themes to us continuously after the sessions, so that they were imprinted in our mind and also discussed from the very different perspectives. Let me repeat some of them again. The first one was communication and cooperation. This seems to be something that we, all of us, are taking the right steps for. So, and also with the support the Alpine Space program, Primoz is not here anymore, but we cannot really conclude this event without saying again how great it was to be part of this program. The second one is responsibility, because knowledge comes with a certain responsibility, and that responsibility brings us to act and also to provoke positive changes, and we really hope that the fruits of our projects will continue bringing these positive changes somewhere already involved. Then we heard the word education, that to rebalance our position and relationship with the environment, there is the need for an educational turn. Our first keynote was very clear on that. And one educational term that addresses individuals in addition to and also other than decision makers. And this idea of educational terms, of course, supports also our shared investment in public awareness, as it was revealed by our boards. And that, of course, brings about also trust. And involvement of citizens in what we're doing.
Yeah, Alicia already mentioned awareness. So actually the knowledge that we gained is not worth much if it only stays in the same circles of people. And so therefore we have to interact with the public and so to show them our findings and also to learn from them in return, to do that all together. And one key aspect that was also mentioned throughout the sessions was engagement, also in the process of planning and decision making. So this is also a core topic. Yeah, so finally, I think I can speak in the name of all SPARE and AlpES project partners when I say a very warm thank you to all of you who spent the last 1.5 days with us, who supported us through the project throughout the last 3 years. And also thanks for your input, your continued feedback, and we really would appreciate your help so that our projects live also beyond the project duration. And yeah, so finally, let me thank you again, have a nice evening and a safe fall back.
And I also want to thank you. There's one minor detail I would like to ask, and then we can all go home after this long week. A group photo. Actually, we didn't make a group photo. So we just realized it, and I would suggest that we all meet in the foyer and we arrange ourselves on the chairs in the foyer, and then we can make a nice group photo. What did I say? Steps, of course. And then we can have a nice picture. Thank you very much.